Thank you for all volunteering to help us with the Bridge to Brisbane Fun Run. The purpose of this meeting is to give you some information about your duties on race day. Some of you are asking about where you can park on the day. Unfortunately, some of the usual places, down by the river for example, will be out of bounds because we'll need extra space for emergency vehicles. Probably the best option is the Jack Gray Sports Field in Barker Street. Although the closest parking lot is the Metro shopping complex, I would advise you not to park there, as they tend to tow away people who aren't customers. At the start line, most of you will be checking that runners have the necessary gear, especially their electronic timing chip, the race number and the identity wristband. Make sure that the number is attached to the front of the running shirt or singlet, not the back. The timing chip, which records the runner's time, needs to be clipped onto one of their shoes, and check that they are wearing their wristband. Some of you will be responsible for organising the starting groups. It's very important that runners start in a particular order. There is a system of colour codes. The red group are walkers and people with baby strollers. The purple group are runners that expect to finish in less than 1 hour, and the yellow group are our elite athletes. We'd like them to start the race, and we'd like the other groups to follow after that, with the red group and the strollers at the very back. This is for their own safety. Now, we are still short on volunteers for the race day, so if you have any friends or family members who might be interested, please let us know. We're probably okay for people to help with the start, but we'll still desperately need volunteers along the race course to distribute water bottles to the runners. A few of you have offered to help with first aid, but the good people of St John's Ambulance have donated their services, so that won't be necessary.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20 on page 4. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Now I'll show you the layout of the race village, which is where the race ends. Can you all see the map? If you look at the bottom right-hand side, you'll see where the runners enter the village, next to the corporate catering section. As you continue along the course, you'll see the stage on your right. That's where the winners will receive their medals. Now, can you all see the finish line near the centre? After they finish the race, the runners can take one of two paths, it doesn't matter which one, to get their finishers' t-shirts from the t-shirt stand at the end of those paths. Many of you will be stationed there at the end of the race. After they've finished, the runners will also want their belongings, and all bags are kept in the building on Bowen Road. It's quite close to the exit, in the top left-hand corner of your map. Now, some of you will have an important role, working in the information centre. That's the building in the centre of the map, not far from the finish line. It's just below it on your map. And one other thing, can you all please remind the runners to enter in the prize draw for the new car? The entry box is between the shade tents and the corporate catering buildings. OK, let's see now. What else do I need to point out? Yes, the runners are always thirsty. And the main water station in the village is just beside the third exit through to Gregory Terrace. Can you see it there to the left of the corporate catering area? So everyone, please direct the race finishers there to get their free bottled water.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
The Indigenous people of Australia, or Aboriginals, have a long history of using animal and plant fibres to make a variety of fabric. Over the years, their traditional designs and stories have been incorporated into various textiles. The Ernabella Arts Centre is a place where local Aboriginals can produce their traditional craft and also learn new techniques to decorate fabric. For the first 30 years, the artists crafted rugs working with wool. These rugs incorporated their own unique designs. However, as they became less economical to produce, the artists were introduced to batik, which is an Indonesian method of dyeing textiles. Batik is quicker than weaving, so many of the Ernabella artists started to produce it themselves. Screen printing was later introduced to the centre, and Ernabella's artists were commissioned to produce fabric for furniture that was to be used at popular tourist destinations such as the National Park offices at Uluru. Screen printing has also been used successfully by the Tiwi people who live on islands north of Darwin. Their company, Tiwi Designs, produces fabric that is inspired by their surroundings. For example, they incorporated bird motifs into their early designs. Tiwi art, culture and language are very different from those of mainland Aboriginal groups. The patterns on their fabric are related to the beliefs and legends in their culture. For example, some textile designs are chosen because they are thought to cause rain. Another successful Aboriginal design company was founded by Jimmy Pike. His dynamic prints, paintings and fabrics are greatly influenced by the Australian landscape, in particular that of the desert, which is often featured in this work. Pike worked with acrylic paint, oil pastels and screen printing. Surprisingly, Jimmy Pike's life as an artist began in prison, where he was serving a sentence for murder. The art teachers there recognised his talent and gave him the technical skills he needed to become a successful artist. After Pike's release, he started his own company, aiming to create a product that would sell well commercially but still retain its Aboriginal cultural identity. Eventually, he decided to bring his artwork onto textiles, which were used to produce clothing. The designs he selected were transferred onto cotton and had both a strong linear character and a good colour range. Bronwyn Bancroft is one of the most successful Aboriginal artists and designers to date. She has produced a great deal of artwork and textiles, and many of her paintings are held by Australian art galleries. Her work reflects her Aboriginal roots, but always with a contemporary, fresh view of family and the natural environment. In 1995, she was chosen by a charity organisation to paint a pair of jeans owned by Cathy Freeman, a famous Aboriginal Australian athlete. She used imagery of lizards moving quickly over the Australian terrain, and she added a rainbow, which represents the optimism that Cathy symbolises for all Aboriginal people. In 2001, she was chosen to design costumes for the opening of the biggest street parade ever held in Australia, the Journey of a Nation parade. The people in Bancroft's section of the parade all wore an outfit she designed. It featured the image of a snake that had no head or tail to represent an ongoing culture. Exploitation of creative work can be a problem for any artist, and copyright laws exist to protect individual artists from the unauthorised use of his or her work. This issue is often more complex for Aboriginal artists, as the symbols and motifs used in their designs also hold cultural significance for them. An example of this was when a businessman had rugs made overseas incorporating images stolen from Aboriginal paintings. The carpet case, as it became known, was taken to court, where luckily the artists won.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
We've been looking at marketing techniques which influence buying decisions. Some of these techniques are related to the way the products are presented in the store. For supermarkets, the store layout is not as random as it seems. Decisions have to be made about the arrangement of the aisles where the customers walk, and the shelves and so on where the products are displayed. The most common layout pattern is the grid layout, where parallel aisles are arranged in a rectangular pattern. Supermarkets like this layout as it allows them to utilise floor space efficiently by providing the greatest amount of display space proportionate to aisle space. Also, this layout helps to manage traffic flow as it encourages people to all walk in one direction. The main weaknesses of the grid layout are the monotony of rows of aisles and the fact that it is easier for customers to rush through the supermarket without lingering. Another layout pattern used by supermarkets is known as the free-form. Here, displays and aisles are arranged in a random pattern. The good thing about this layout is that customers tend to spend more time in the store as they wander about looking for different products. Its main weakness is the inefficient use of space, which means it is less cost-effective. Then we have the boutique layout, where everything is organised around a food specialty, such as the bakery. The advantage of this layout is that it divides parts of the store into smaller areas, which may be distinguished by changes in flooring or displays. A further advantage is that this style of layout is attractive to shoppers. Space, however, is not used economically, and it is therefore expensive. The choice of location of particular types of items in the store is also important. A supermarket's design aims to direct customers to the store's side and rear walls. Items typically displayed along the rear length of the store include meat and dairy products, since these appear on the grocery list of the majority of shoppers. This means shoppers must pass by a large number of other items to get to them. Items which consumers tend to spend more time considering before buying, such as cosmetics, are usually placed away from the busy areas so that people can look at them in comfort without feeling rushed. Products placed at the end of aisles are clearly visible, and therefore these locations provide a greater opportunity for shoppers to view the products. Consumers tend to assume that items on display at the end of an aisle are on sale, but this is often not the case. In fact, supermarket managers often place products which are not selling quickly enough in these positions. The placement of products on shelves is very carefully planned. Supermarket executives use computer-generated plans to help them place products on shelves in a way that ensures consumers spend more. The eye level of the average woman is 1 metre 60 centimetres off the floor, which is the height of the middle shelves, so the things which cost more are placed here, while cheaper products are placed on higher or lower shelves. Only items targeted at children break this rule. They are placed on the lowest shelves. Supermarkets also use a range of other marketing techniques to encourage consumers to spend more. It's no accident that in nearly every supermarket, the fruit and vegetable department is the first shoppers come to as they enter the store. These, together with flowers, produce a greater profit than any other department. After complaints from parents, many supermarkets no longer place popular products aimed at children on the shelves next to the checkout. Instead, you are most likely to find products aimed at impulse buyers, such as chocolate, magazines and other treats here. Many supermarkets have also expanded into non-food areas such as clothing, entertainment and stationery. These products often find...
That is the end of section 4.
First of all, let me thank you all for coming to this public meeting to discuss the future of our town. Our first speaker is Shona Ferguson from Barford Town Council. Shona.
Thank you. First, I'll briefly give you some background information. Then I'll be asking you for your comments on developments in the town. Well, as you don't need me to tell you, Barford has changed a great deal in the last 50 years. These are some of the main changes. 50 years ago, buses linked virtually every part of the town and the neighbouring towns and villages. Most people used them frequently, but not now, because the bus companies concentrate on just the routes that attract most passengers. So parts of the town are no longer served by buses. Even replacing old, uncomfortable buses with smart new ones has had little impact on passenger numbers. It's sometimes said that bus fares are too high, but in relation to average incomes, fares are not much higher than they were 50 years ago. Changes in the road network are affecting the town. The centre was recently closed to traffic on a trial basis, making it much safer for pedestrians. The impact of this is being measured. The new cycle paths separating bikes from cars in most main roads are being used far more than was expected, reducing traffic and improving air quality. And although the council's attempts to have a bypass constructed have failed, we haven't given up hope of persuading the government to change its mind. Shopping in the town centre has changed over the years. Many of us can remember when the town was crowded with people going shopping. Numbers have been falling for several years, despite efforts to attract shoppers, for instance by opening new car parks. Some people combine shopping with visits to the town's restaurants and cafes. Most shops are small, independent stores, which is good, but many people prefer to use supermarkets and department stores in nearby large towns, as there are so few well-known chain stores here. Turning now to medical facilities. The town is served by family doctors in several medical practices, fewer than 50 years ago, but each catering for far more patients. Our hospital closed 15 years ago, which means journeys to other towns are unavoidable. On the other hand, there are more dentists than there used to be. Employment patterns have changed along with almost everything else. The number of schools and colleges has increased, making that the main employment sector. Services such as website design and accountancy have grown in importance, and surprisingly perhaps, manufacturing hasn't seen the decline that has affected it in other parts of the country. Now I'll very quickly outline current plans for some of the town's facilities, before asking for your comments. As you'll know if you regularly use the car park at the railway station, it's usually full. The railway company applied for permission to replace it with a multi-storey car park, but that was refused. Instead, the company has bought some adjoining land, and this will be used to increase the number of parking spaces. The Grand, the old cinema in the High Street, will close at the end of the year and reopen on a different site. You've probably seen the building under construction. The plan is to have 3 screens with fewer seats rather than just the one large auditorium in the old cinema. I expect many of you shop in the indoor market. It's become more and more shabby looking, and because of fears about safety, it was threatened with demolition. The good news is that it will close for 6 weeks to be made safe and redecorated, and the improved building will open in July. Lots of people use the library, including school and college students who go there to study. The council has managed to secure funding to keep the library open later into the evening, twice a week. We would like to enlarge the building in the not-too-distant future, but this is by no means definite. There's no limit on access to the nature reserve on the edge of town, and this will continue to be the case. What will change, though, is that the council will no longer be in charge of the area. Instead, it will become the responsibility of a national body that administers most nature reserves in the country. OK, now let me ask...